Nuclear fuel has heated up to a boiling point that's creating a real risk that more radioactive steam could spew out of the crippled nuclear plant. And so David Wright is monitoring the late-breaking details out of Japan this morning for us. David, good morning.
Good morning, David. This is one of the most frustrating things about covering this story is it's impossible to know for sure what's going on inside that reactor. All day long we've been hearing upbeat assessments from the Tokyo Power Company about reactor number 2. And then late today, this report from the Associated Press that the pressure inside that pool in reactor number 2 is now at the boiling point.
The International Atomic Energy Agency now says the people inside the evacuation zone around the crippled nuclear plant are being exposed to more radiation every day than the average Japanese person absorbs in a year, 386 millirems.
Our task today is to take the temperature of Tokyo using our trusty radiation contamination detector, a Geiger counter. It measures radiation exposure in millirems per hour. And to give you some context, 600 millirems is about the normal amount that everybody receives every year. The measurement right here in Shibuya, the Times Square of Tokyo, 0.003. Nothing. Our first stop here is the world-famous Tsukiji Fish Market. This place is the biggest wholesale fish and seafood market in the world. And our trusty device here says the level of background radiation is about 0.0102. Let's check out this little guy.
No difference whatsoever. This fishmonger has worked here for 50 years. He says he's never seen it so slow. The main problem, he says, is that so many fishing boats were destroyed by the tsunami. No one's bringing any fish.
I would imagine you must be worried that consumers will stop buying Japanese fish because they're worried about radiation.
He says yes, the foreigners have already stopped buying.
These are the iconic cherry trees along the Meguro River, due to start blossoming this weekend. But the tourists probably won't see them this year. Background radiation here, even in the rain, 0.01. Negligible.
We stopped off for lunch at a sushi joint. The owner is a charming woman with bright green hair. The fish is fine here, she reassured us. I eat it every day.
So as discreetly as possible here, so as not to give offense, we're going to take out our trusty device and give a quick read. And it looks good enough to eat, so here goes.
For Good Morning America, David Wright, ABC News, Tokyo.
I have to say the sushi was delicious, but you know, in this neighborhood you see another impact of the situation up north. Normally this neighborhood would be as bright as the Vegas Strip, but many of the businesses have turned their lights off because of the problems at the nuclear reactor that normally supplies the power. David?
Some reassuring news there, though. David Wright in Japan this morning. David, thank you. But we want to turn right back to the breaking news this morning on those fuel pools now at a boiling point again. And so joining us is physicist Michio Kaku, of course. Dr. Kaku, you've been leading us through this the whole time, and we're glad you're back with us this morning. That troubles you this morning to hear that.
It does. The last 3 days we've had reassuring words. We've turned the corner. Things are stable, but it's on a knife's edge. Any small earthquake, any spent fuel pond boiling incident could cause workers to evacuate. Guess what happened? Just a few hours ago, this huge puff of radioactive smoke came out, and they had to partially evacuate the workers.
You talk about that puff of smoke, so let's turn to the map this morning. They put this together, and as we sort of push in on Japan, you see Sendai to the north, obviously the earthquake zone, but there were 3 areas where there have been concern. When we move in on this, you'll see them, the sort of towns to the north, and obviously the biggest concern up there in Miyagi is the fact that they don't have indicators, do they?
That's right. Miyagi, the indicators were actually damaged by the tsunami itself, so we have no readings. Now, Ibaraki, further south, is registering normal levels, but again, only temporarily. We expect the cloud to go over Ibaraki as well, and normal levels will start to shoot up in the next few hours.
And I wanted to get what you think of Fukushima. We're going to push in there, and you'll see that a number of the indicators are showing spiked levels, and this was expected, but when you hear about the plume this morning, we could see readings even higher than what we're seeing.
That's right. The outer ring is out to 18 miles. That's 6 miles outside the evacuation zone. Radiation levels there are approximately 110 microsieverts per hour. In other words, a chest x-ray per hour in these areas. And as you go closer to the reactor, it starts to go up to hundreds, thousands of chest x-rays per hour.
And we heard David Wright report there that the average person working near the plant and living around in Fukushima has been exposed to 1,600 times the normal radiation?
That's right. We're talking about staggering amounts of radiation, and as you go to the reactor site itself, the workers are like samurai warriors. They know that when they go in, they may not live to see the day in the future.
Reports that many of them texted their wives. They didn't have time to say goodbye to their family as they raced to the nuclear plant. I brought the Geiger counter that we had with us traveling in Japan over the last week, and I wanted to ask you about it because about an hour north of Tokyo as we were traveling back in, it spiked for a sustained period of time, about 45 minutes. And you were saying earlier that that's not a surprise.
That's not a surprise. When you see a smokestack, the wind blows the smoke in a plume that is a wedge about 15 degrees in extent. And as your car goes in and out of this invisible wedge, your Geiger counter will spike as you go in and out. So that's rather common. And in fact, the cloud itself is invisible. And that's what's so scary. You cannot see this cloud as it goes right overhead.
So when you hear about electricity being connected to some of the plants, we don't know how much has been powered up inside these troubled reactors. You say the caution is not completely wiped out, obviously.
There could be hydrogen gas there. And if they hook up the power and then they turn it on and there's a spark, that could set off a hydrogen gas explosion. So they're not turning on the pumps yet. The media gets it wrong. They've connected the wires to the pumps, but they haven't turned the pumps on for fear of an explosion.
All right, that's the next big question. Dr. Kaku, thank you, as always, for being with us here this morning. Robin, back over to you.
Hey, David, as we monitor the efforts to contain the radiation threat from Japan's damaged nuclear reactors, thousands of Japanese are still homeless. Clarissa Ward has more on one community trying to pick up the pieces after the earthquake and the tsunami flattened almost everything in sight. Clarissa joins us now from Morioka, Japan.
Good morning.